Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to themanthatcanproject.com to find out more.
You can kind of look at people like dollars, like, oh, a dollar isn't much. A dollar to someone who has nothing is a lot. A dollar can go a long way, but to someone who has millions or thousands, what have you, a dollar can get lost in the mix of things. And I don't know, for me, I think I've always tried to maintain that a dollar is very important.
And for me, I remember when I was running workshops and no one would show up and I'd just be like, righto, it's a great opportunity to rehearse. And I do find myself now getting disappointed in myself if I don't have a certain number of people, show up to an event or a workshop, because I'm like, come on, credibility should be there. I did X amount of people showed up here. However, now when you say that, it reminds me, it's like there was a time where I wanted, just one person to show up and, feel inspired by me. Now we get that. It's such a beautiful thing. The Man That Can Project podcast, a podcast empowering career-driven men to live more fulfilling lives. We are here to challenge your beliefs, redefine success, and talk about the important stuff in a relatable way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. My name's Lachlan Stuart. Let's get into it. Guys, before we dive into today's episode with my main man, Forest Blakk, I want to let you know something very exciting. We've been very fortunate to have a lot of mentors and guidance over the years, and also feedback from our incredible members. And one thing that really stood out from recent feedback, and also just advice from a current mentor, was that not everyone wants to be part of a community, and not everyone is ready to be part of a community, especially one like ours where we're empowering you and providing you with the tools and community to be the best version of yourself, to help you create direction for your life by building your mental fitness and your physical fitness. And I really struggled to understand that until a few recent conversations. And off the back of those conversations, I was like, okay, so there's plenty of people out there who want to improve themselves physically, and they want to improve themselves mentally, but they want to do it their way. And one of the great things is we now have a basic plan version for the Strong Men of Value Academy. And what that is there for is for those of you who are motivated and goal-driven individuals who want to improve your mental fitness and also your physical fitness, or you're on the flip side where you're not quite ready to be part of a community, but you still want that growth, that is now available for you. And it's available for $12.50 a week. That is less than 2 cups of coffee. Oh, actually, let's say price of coffee now. Let's say it's about 3 cups of coffee. And you can get a fitness plan that you can follow. You can track it. You can sync it up with everything. Similar programming to what I'm doing. So if you like the workouts that you see me doing, definitely get involved. You get a 12-week game plan, so you have that accountability, you have that opportunity to build self-awareness and track your progress. And finally, every month we will send you a coaching module, something from a mental fitness or a physical fitness standpoint, where you can watch a live recording that we do within our platinum version of the Academy. And we will send you a worksheet so that you can actually start doing that as well. But once again, you can do that in the comfort of your own home, and you don't have to engage with myself or the community. So if that one strikes you better and you have been wanting to get involved in the Academy, but for whatever reason you didn't want to be a part of the community or you weren't ready, check out the new availability over on the Man That Can Project. Head to the website and the membership section, and you've now got 2 choices, which is awesome. People love choices, and choose the one that you feel is going to add the most value to you. But we are really excited to be able to provide and serve more men to help you guys create more direction by building that mental and physical fitness. But that's enough from me. let's dive into today's episode with Forest Blakk.
No, I didn't want to give away my secrets. People have been confused the last couple of weeks. They're like, what is
You really look good.
Thank you, man. You to say that around Christmas time means the world to me.
I feel like it's an important thing to tell people. After all, we have been to France together.
We've done many things together.
I know, it's crazy. I feel like we've lived a lot of lives.
And we've got some stories to tell. But though, I guess we should do a quick little introduction, even though I've probably, by the time people are listening to this, done an introduction already, so they know who's here. But let's just assume that I forgot to do an introduction and who I'm looking at. Everyone's like, who's this dude who's better looking than Lockie in an incredibly colorful jumper? What jumper is that, by the way, just quickly?
I'm not telling you.
Oh.
I would, but then I'd have to off you. I don't want to do it.
Well, that's fair. You value our relationship more than your jumper. I appreciate that.
I have raised the stakes on my fashion game this year. So this is part of it.
I have actually noticed that. I was going to comment once again. Fashion. Do you know what you should do? You know how you got your Instagram page, Fitting Forest, for your health journey? We should start a new one called Fashion Forest.
Sorry.
Fashion. Oh, it's there? Oh, my goodness. Well, for everyone listening in, this is Forest Blakk, and you've had an incredible year. But before we dive into that, we decided last year, because it was our third podcast together, and they'd roughly been 12 months apart. We're like, why not let's just do this until we're old and gray. We never said that, but let's just do that.
We've gotten older and grayer, so we're just doing it.
I don't reckon I'll have hair next year, so I'll be older and grayer and less handsome, hairy, and all that. Anyway, we've done a number of podcasts sharing things about your life, and then last year we were reflecting on all the amazing things that had happened to you since our previous podcast. And I know we're going to do the same. We're going to do a yearly recap around what you've learned, the success that you've had, the incredible, I don't want to steal all your thunder, so I'm not going to say it all, but you've had some cool shit happening this year, as have I. I'm going to share some stuff. But our last, hold on, where's the camera? Why won't that focus? But our last two podcasts, for those who want to go out and listen to how far we have both come, you can listen to episode 271, which was about heartache and growing into the man that I want to be. Remember that episode? That was just after we left.
Yeah,
you'd actually visited us in Oz.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
wow,
painful daggers.
Yeah, if you want pain and sadness, that's the episode.
That's for you this Christmas. Yeah. Then we've got episode 359, which was seeking discomfort. And we spoke about a whole heap of cool stuff, expectations versus reality. Obviously, you moving back to the US or basing yourself back in the US and a heap of cool stuff like that. But, dude.
And I think I was like podcast like number 5 as well, right? There's an early.
Literally, you're one of my biggest YouTubes as well. Like, I've only just still started dialing into YouTube, but for whatever reason, that one we did in 2017 has gone nuts.
Yeah.
I cringed when I listened to that. I listened to that about 6 weeks ago and I cringed.
Why?
Because you communicate really well, Forrest. I did not back then.
I think that's a view that you might have of yourself. Because I think the trick is when someone is interviewing somebody, or because you're technically the interviewer, you got me to talk. So, but I think that we have what's called visual and perceptual adaptation, and that's part of it. Like, you don't realize how far you've come until you're kind of there, and even that's complicated because you've lived in it every single day. So you really don't see the work that you've put in. You don't see the 5 feet that you've made, or the 10 feet of progress, or the 1,000 feet of progress. True. So I think we're all seeking something. I don't know. I look back on those early interviews and go, wow, like what an honor it is to have paid into what this has become. Like, wow, look at all the growth you've had. Wow, look at how far you've come. Look at how you ask questions differently, or how you listen differently, or how you see the world differently. And like, man, I don't know. I kind of look back on moments like that, and which I understand the cringe. I'm an artist. I have those too. Like, I'm sure I can dig through the internet and find some pretty bad interviews where I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what to do. But there's part of me that looks at me like I was a young dude and going, wow, like Yeah, you really didn't know what you're doing, but that's really cool that you stayed in it.
Yeah, very true, mate. But you're one talented. I was actually listening to a song you wrote with Shepherd the other day. Banger. I'm not going to
Learning to
give it a
fly or a different one?
different one. Different one.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a banger. Absolute banger.
I
You can
love
always tell when you write with them as well, or you guys all collaborate. It's brilliant. So I'm looking forward to
I,
that one
I
coming out.
feel like I feel like we're there, we're the upside down of each other. For whatever reason, like we've all connected for a long time, and I don't know, man, I look at everyone in that family like their family. Like I
We're
have their right there, the one that they signed for
yeah,
me. So yeah.
fantastic. I'm excited to catch up with you next year.
To our brother Forest, we love you always. It says.
You sound like you should be out in outback Australia with like hanging out with some serial killer.
No.
No, not at all. Never. But dude, you've had a huge year, like a huge year. And I just got to brush up on one thing that for those of you who don't follow Forest on Instagram, I do recall last year telling you to follow Forest because this time every year you start giving your mobile. Actually, you do this all the time, but you really emphasize it, especially around this time of year where you'll get on the phone with people throughout Christmas who maybe don't have loved ones to talk to, and you'll give any amount of time. And we were talking about this on the last episode. I was like, do you have like a 3-minute cap so you can get through all these phone calls? And you're just like, whatever they need. And I still, and I saw it come up the other day and I was like, hey, bro, it's time for our annual catch up. Even though I'd been prepping for about 6 weeks because I started listening to our podcasts again, just to be like, what are some things that has come up for us over the years? But I still really love that about you, no matter the trajectory that you've been on. Like obviously 24 months ago, you really started booming. And this last 12 months from everything that I've seen is just catastrophic. And you're still the same dude, like in terms of you still make time for people, your fans, and just even myself to connect on a more personal level, which is one of the traits that I absolutely love about you.
Thanks, man. I think people are at the core of everything. They're the reason, like it'd be really strange to do this and have no one listening. And so I think like it's easy to get a big head about it because, you're like, oh, I'm popular. And, and at some point you can kind of look at people like dollars, like, oh, a dollar isn't much. A dollar to someone who has nothing is a lot. A dollar can go a long way, but to someone who has millions or thousands, what have you, a dollar can get lost in the mix of things. And I don't know, for me, I think I've always tried to maintain that a dollar is very important. I remember not having a dollar. And so I know it's maybe weird to equate someone to a number, but I think what I'm really trying to express is that people aren't worth overlooking. It's, it's like, if you want to just say, it's like having one fan show up to a concert, and you can be, you might be very happy that at least one person showed up, and you place where 1,000 people show up. It's really important, in my opinion, not to dismiss each person on an individual and singular level, because I don't know, man, every year I get people who message me and tell me really deep stories. And an example, I had a fan this week. She's in my community and she was texting with me, and she's like, she's going to come to one of the shows. And then she just, for whatever reason, a lot of people tend to get quite vulnerable with me and very real. And she's like, I have brain cancer and breast cancer at stage 4, and I've just decided to stop treatment. And going to your show is a very important part of my life, and I want to make it to your show. And I don't even know how to process it. I sat there and I was like, I had a friend across the table from me, and I had to share that with them because I felt overwhelmed myself, and I really didn't know what to do with this information. And then my friend starts crying, and then I'm getting teary-eyed, and I'm like, man, like, you just really don't know what someone else is experiencing, and you can oftentimes miss the point of like how big and important you are to somebody. And there's a balancing act in that too, because you only have a certain capacity, and you can't really kill yourself to go out all the time for every person, and then there's the other part, which I know you've seen with Shepherd, where like sometimes people lie to get that attention from people. So that's very complicated. So there's just a lot of feelings to unpack, but again, as the artist, you're like, man, I remember when no one was really listening, and I really try to remember that and not to overlook it, because it's going to happen again. Like that curve is coming. Like the
Yep.
way up is the way up, and the way down is the way down, and each person matters. And yeah, man, I don't know. I'm in a really interesting place this year, because for all intents and purposes, like I've made it. If anyone were to look at me, they go, yeah, you've done it. Like you got the plaques on the wall. You're a platinum selling artist in America. That's so big for a non-American. And nothing has changed. Nothing's changed. It's all the same. And so I'm in this place of like, oh, I guess I thought there, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I thought like confetti would come raining down from the heavens. Like, I don't really know what I expected, yeah, a bunch of people come in wearing funny clothes, and they're like, yeah, and like they're cheering you on, and
Yeah.
but really at the end of the day, it's just you with yourself and your thoughts, and you're always trying to like write against the last song that you wrote that did something, and those pressures. And I don't know, man, like life is going by quickly. I've lost some people I cared about this year, and that always puts things into perspective. And so here I am going, all right, like what matters, what's important, who's important, how do I want to grow into that? What do I want my future to look like? And yeah, people are really a important and key and integral part of the infrastructure of my life.
Where do you feel you learnt it from? Because I'm sitting here thinking about how grateful I am just now having this conversation, and you're talking about the dollar, for example. And for me, I remember when I was running workshops and no one would show up, and I'd just be like, righto, it's a great opportunity to rehearse. And I do find myself now getting disappointed in myself if I don't have a certain number of people, show up to an event or a workshop, because I'm like, come on, credibility should be there. I did X amount of people showed up here. However, now when you say that, it reminds me, it's like there was a time where I wanted, just one person to show up and feel inspired by me. Now we get that. It's such a beautiful thing. And it also highlights the importance of so many people, myself included, I guess, to a degree, love the idea of having influence and having reach, whether it's across social platforms or podcasts or whatever it may be. But all we need to do is start with the people that are in our direct circle of influence. Like if we can give them time and treat them the way that we, feel that would grow our career, for example, or our influence, it should be a byproduct of that.
Yeah, I get that. I'm going on tour, and I'm doing my first headlining tour in the United States.
I'm so proud of you as well. Fuck,
thank you.
Cool.
It's really cool, but I've opened and I've played to 10,000 people a night, but here's a new pressure. It's a whole new stress. And I did catch myself for a quick moment going like, like this show sold out, but this show is really underperforming. And, kind of being like, well, man, I've put the work in. I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of streams now, and my songs are everywhere. And, like right now I'm viral on Facebook, and I'm in the top 6 biggest trending songs on TikTok right now. It's like, so right. You're like, man, like this is going to equate to something. And it's really easy to get caught in those numbers. But really the thing is that at the end of the day, I have to show up, and I have to show up for whoever wants to show up. And I will build the future I'll build with those people. And I don't know. I think the big thing is that for me, I'm learning right now is just to really try and enjoy that. And like, because I found that a lot of times I enjoy things with like retrospect. I don't always enjoy things in the present. I'm very able to look back on something. Like an example, like we went to France, me, you, Amy, and my ex. And I don't know I didn't realize how fun it was until now, where I look back and I go, man, if we could just go there tomorrow, how cool that would be. So I think like that's a small little like microcosm of the bigger thing, which is now I'm just trying to enjoy it all. I'm just trying to wake up every day and going like, wow, this is just really, really freaking incredible. Like, I'm just really grateful for anyone showing up. And again, whether it's tens of thousands or whether it's one, it's like, thanks. Like, I guess, it's a trip.
Is there anything in particular you do for that? Because I feel, once again, so many of us have so many things to be grateful for. And when you don't focus on it, it's easy to fall in that trap, like you don't have enough or you aren't enough. You've got everything in the palm of your hands, as you've said, like you're having huge success globally at the moment. When you wake up in the mornings and want to remind yourself of that, is there anything in particular that you do?
No, I think it's just a practice,
Oh,
you know. I know, I wish there was, but you know, it's kind of the same thing. Like with my relationship with Thule, it's like it's easy to forget that you're in the relationship with the person like of like your dreams. It's like, wow, it's you can we can all get to that place where you forget because that shine that wears off, you know, that like early like relationship thing wears off. And I think that goes for everything. It goes for career, it goes for friendships, it goes for everything. There's like a dullness to life because we're very enamored by new things. That's very human of us now and culturally where we are. So I think that if anything, it's just the practice. Like if you wake up and you just think about, you know, like, I mean, I guess you could, maybe there are some practices I do without knowing, but I don't know, the big question of like, what are you grateful for today? You know, or like when something is confusing, to stop and like just take a minute and like really breathe it in and breathe it out and go, okay, like what's going on? Like, what am I actually focused on? What am I concerned about? And it's like these little shifts. Like, if I'm concerned that maybe a venue hasn't sold as much, then that tells me that what I feel at my core is the desire to play to more people.
Mm.
So like, it's like kind of shifting my view from, oh, there's not enough people to, no, there are a lot of people, but I dream of more people. And so that gives me direction because like one doesn't have any direction. One is like just a feeling of sadness and despair, and the other is a direction. So like let's say I have 30 people coming to a venue, and that's not really good for an artist at my size. It's not good at all. Um, another viewpoint might be like, oh, maybe not a lot of people know me in that region because I haven't put my focus in that region at all.
Mm.
So why is it that people aren't connecting to me there? Maybe there's something to look at. There's something missing, you know? So what do I need to do that because I know I have fans there. So like, what's going on? And then that's directional stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. Is it a promoter thing? Is it, I haven't initiated or engaged with my fans enough in that area to let them know, hey, I'm coming to that town. Someone said something to me recently, and I can't remember who it was, and that's terrible. I should know, but they're like, when you think about how you promote something, we oftentimes think that everyone's watching us. And so you say something once and then it's there and then everyone should know about it. But the truth is no one knows. And you have to keep continuously doing this thing where you have to put yourself in front of people. And there's a saying that I've been saying for the past, I mean, I guess it's been like almost 10 years, is like, what got you here won't get you there. So to really consider your approach to things.
Mm.
Consider how you're putting your foot forward. Consider what it is you're doing, how it is you're doing it. So anyway, I'm slowly losing my train of thought now. But
No, I think it's a important point. Everything that you're saying, I'm then thinking about how it fits into my business, etc. And I remember at the beginning the amount of work that I put in to get in front of new people and also continue building relationships. And obviously, as your audience size grows, time becomes limited with where you can put it. And sometimes it's very easy to fall in the trap of going, I need to continue building new fans or grow my audience. And you can find yourself neglecting the audience that you already have, which has got you to that point. I think the best way to grow an audience is to service the fans or audience that you have and have them rave about you to people in their life, because the best the best way to grow is through a referral of someone that's already seen you, right? When someone tells me something, I'm like, sweet.
yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to do something really big in in the biggest market in the world. So it's like, and it's all these things of just looking back and remembering and reminding myself again where the gratitude is, what it is I'm trying to do, like direction and purpose for sure. But like I toured with a friend of mine who was much bigger than me at the time, and I remember playing a show and we had 20 people at the show, and I was opening, so it was a very different pressure because like there was no pressure for me. I kind of just felt bad that there was only 20 people at the show.
Yep.
It's really interesting, like to be in that shoe now, like or in those shoes, and I'm like, oh wow, like I'm doing the thing too. And like, I'm here. I'm a Canadian in America earning my stripes. And like, that's really hard. Wow. Like, and that's that gratitude again. It's like, man, I'm proud of myself for doing this. And if something doesn't feel like it's fulfilling me, then I have to start figuring out what the direction is through there instead of like the feel bad, woe is me type of stuff. I'm like, oh, I gotta, you know, I don't know. It's like, it's that cliche, like when one door closes, other doors open. It's like I have to look for the open doors rather than sitting there on the locked door trying to open it over and over again.
That perspective you speak about is so beautiful. It's easy to definitely feel like you're not playing to enough, but the perspective shift that I am playing to enough. Like I'm playing to a lot of people, but I want to play to more. Like that for me is like so empowering. I'm the exact same in the podcast and stuff. It's like sometimes I'm like, damn it. It's like, you stream my streams downloads go, but they're still going up.
Yeah, but that's like, it's like weight loss and all the things that I've done in my life and you've done and other people have done. It's a trajectory. Nothing is like, no line is like straight up. Like there's ebbs and flows to it all. So like it's every relationship anyone's ever had. It's you push through and grow. I had a fan tell me today that my music has gotten them through some of the darkest times in their life. And I was like, wow. And then they went on to say that it's been a really tough time. And I was like, wow, it's like, thank you for sharing that with me. It always impacts me to hear that stuff. Like it really hits at my core. I'm like, wow, I feel like a very big sense of purpose and I really don't feel alone.
Yep.
But I wrote this fan and I was like, I'm sorry that life has been tough. And I just hope that you look at it, that those dark times are almost like you're a seed being dropped in the ground and the ground gets covered over top and it gets dark. And in that dark time, that's when the seed really plants its roots and it starts to grow and it's longing to seek visibility, and that light is all the purpose it needs to grow and sprout. And that's what seeds do. They chase the sun. They chase that light in the world and it doesn't know why. It's just doing what it has to do. And I think humans are very similar. But I think that we can all get caught up in the fact that we're covered in dirt for a few minutes. It's pretty dark down there. So that's another thing about this year. I've talked very candidly about mental health and what I've experienced and what I go through. And I always thought that the bigger this thing got, the more people would be around and the less lonely I would feel and the less I would suffer with what mental health stuff I was dealing with. And that's another shock this year because none of that's changed. If anything, it gets a little bit lonelier every year.
Why do you feel that is?
I think that what happens is that people, when you start to gain any notoriety, and this is with no negative feelings towards it. It's more of an understanding now. It definitely was hard earlier, like in the last few years until now. But when you gain any notoriety, I think what happens is people unintentionally place you on a pedestal and they automatically assume things. And the first thing they assume is that they're lower than you. And when someone is lower than you, it changes the approach in which they reach to contact you or connect with you. So instead of like, I don't know, for me, it looks like a series of hand gestures. So bear with me as I explain it. But when you meet, like when you're in grade 1 or like primary school, what have you, and you meet another kid, it's like a high five or a handshake. You're equal. You know nothing about each other yet. So it's a handshake. It's equal. If you, as you start getting older, you start to position your life in two ways. You're either the hand that offers or you're the two hands that need to take. And it becomes this 3 different hand gesture piece now. So when you meet someone and you're equal, you're 2 CEOs of a company, or you're 2 bakers at 2 different bakeries, or two different garbage men. It doesn't matter. It's a handshake. You acknowledge the fact that you're both doing something and it's equal. You haven't assumed yet. You haven't figured out where you stand. So it always is the handshake or the high five. I think with people who look at me, if they are not if they look at me and they think they're not where I am, but they strive or they want to be where I am, I think oftentimes people reach with scarcity. So it looks like 2 hands. And I think people are afraid to do that because they don't want to feel that way. That's a very conflicting experience, I imagine, as well. I mean, I go through that too, right? If I'm talking to, Don Henley, from Eagles, like I'll probably be like, yeah, here's my two
Yes,
hands.
man, please.
Yeah, or Paul McCartney or something like that, or or Stevie Wonder. I'm gonna be two hands. I have scarcity in my heart because I feel unequal to. I feel like I'm striving towards a greatness like that, and I don't. I would be hard to meet with the handshake as an equal, and for them, I think it would be really hard to meet me as an equal as well. And so there's nothing wrong with all this. I was talking to a friend of mine, and maybe I said this in the last podcast, I can't remember, but I have this theory called the theory of the thirds. And I think I said it last year, right?
But carry on.
So it's just how to spend your time. Spend a third of your time with people who have the exact same as you, are on the same level. It's really important. Spend a third of your time with people who have less than you and who aspire to be where you are, and then spend a third of your time with people who are where you want to be, where you aspire to be. And that just never stops. Like, it's going to be like that for the rest of your life. And I think the same thing applies to this experience that I'm saying about, because there are people where I accidentally or unintentionally put them in a place of superiority. There are people where I unintentionally put them in places of inferiority. And there are people who I intentionally put as places as equal. And so I think you put that into the mental health scope, and I don't know, like it's interesting to watch a lot of friends of mine not know how to maybe interact with me any longer. Because they assume I'm too busy, or they assume I'm famous, and so they're like, "Oh man, yeah, I didn't want to take your time." And I'm like, "No, but my phone doesn't ring. You can call me. I'd probably be happy to hear from you." So anyway, I'm over speaking it now, but it's a lot of these things over the past decade, and every year there are little things that surprise me a little bit more than others, and things that maybe don't surprise me as much. And that was one of the ones that I think about more often than not, because what created the ambition to do this was always centered around the idea of not being alone. I just wanted to be surrounded by people. I wanted to be admired, and I wanted to admire. I wanted to create and cultivate a community. And I have. It just doesn't look the way that I thought it would look. And so, which is great. That's just a different perspective shift. But I think, I don't know, I set a goal, and I had an idea in mind, and I've definitely gone way past wherever I thought I could get. It just looks a bit different than what I thought it would, and with no negative thought about it. It's very wonderful, and again, I've amassed a mass community and people who really care and people who love, and there are people who aren't there who I thought would be, and it's just a very different landscape, and it's wonderful.
Now that have you reached, going back to the younger Forest, like when you just left Makeshift Innocence and all of this sort of stuff, and you aspired to achieve the things that you've achieved, is there anything left on your, I guess, goal list career-wise that you'd like to accomplish?
Totally. I mean, there's a lot of personal goals that are happening. So this year has been, like, for me, it's been the year of personal growth in a very, very special way. I mean, I feel like every year is personal growth, but I feel like I'm in a place finally where I want to speak through the most authentic lens. And an example of that is I've had fans try and figure out my birth name and call me by my birth name, and this has been something that I've shied away from for years. I don't like talking about it. I've asked people to take it down. I've had publications about it. I've asked them to take it down. I've always been running from it. This is the first year where I'm turning the opposite direction. I'm running towards it.
Why had you been running from it?
Because I didn't know how to articulate the pain that the name came with. I didn't know how to express what that looked and what that felt like. And part of me thanks the big cultural movement in people trying to figure out pronouns, because it gave me a very different look at things, because when you hear a cultural shift like that, you have to question it in your head and go, well, why is that important? And can I too subscribe to it? How can I deal with it? And I find the answer usually lies with how I would feel if I found myself in a position like that. And interestingly enough, I don't have, for me, my pronouns are intact the way I was born and the way I feel. And so I'm very confident in that. And I haven't had to fight for that feeling. However, I was given a name at birth that I don't subscribe to, and I feel hurts every time I hear it. And so now I feel like I can relate and put myself in a certain set of shoes to go, I don't understand myself with that sound phonetically and being identified with it. That is a very big feeling. And so being able to compartmentalize that a bit and go, oh, okay, so that's why I feel this way. It creates pain. And people, when you change your name, people go, I know you as your old name and I'm going to refer to you as your old name. People literally say that to me. And I have to find ways to articulate, hey, there's a lot of pain in that, but I don't want to get so deep. I don't want to have to explain. I want the respect that when I ask this of people, that they understand that I've thought about it long and hard enough to bring it up, that it's complicated.
Yeah.
And so it must mean something. And so again, I have had a struggle for the last decade almost in this, trying to articulate how I feel about a name. And so that's a massive shift for me. And, I did my first big publication where I spoke to it. I had an interview with People magazine in the States, which is a massive outlet. And I was talking to the interviewer, and she asked me, about certain things. And I was like, well, yeah, my biological father gave me away for 10 grams of cocaine and sold my name. And I was adopted and given a different name. And that really bugs me. And to be able to say that, it's so heavy, but it feels so good and freeing to be like, hey, it's not pretty, but it's part of my story. And I've had the privilege of sitting down with some really awesome people this year and have worked on talking about a lot of these things. And it doesn't heal the wound necessarily, but what it does is it cleans the wound, and it provides a little bit of healing in that cleanliness. So it can, part of me can start that process of getting it almost feels like an infection. It feels like cutting your arm or something like that, or your hand. I wasn't cleaning out the dirt, and so that I was never healing. It was always bugging me. It was always irritated. And so I feel like I'm actually doing that work where I'm cleaning it out. And yeah, even things like shadow work and learning about that, and holy cow, man, it's
how fun is it? It's interesting.
Bro. Yeah, it's a lot. So anyway, it's been an incredible year of that type of reflection, because you set goals, you reach goals, and then you don't see what you were looking for. It's kind of like climbing Mount Everest to get all the way to the top, and it was cloudy and you didn't see anything. And you're like, oh shit, I just climbed Everest for the best view in the world, but my view was cloudy.
It's cool to hear you speak so openly about that, especially when, once again, for people watching you from the outside, assuming that all this success that you've had and just the trajectory that you're on, that life's good. And you've mentioned you still feel alone in some instances. It hasn't solved all these problems for you. It hasn't made you instantly have better mental health. It hasn't stopped your, wanting to belong and feel valued. All of these things are, obviously in different circumstances, but a lot of people can relate to that. They go, I have mental health challenges, or I feel alone. I don't feel heard. And we think that by becoming more successful in our field, it's going to go away.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
I chased that my whole time with footy, and I realized that when I moved to France, I was like, I've made it here. And then 3 months later, oh, poor old Lockie's alone in the room with his own thoughts, and that's not a fun place to be. But unlike you at the time, with your ability and awareness to want to work on these things, I just turned to, recreational drugs or to alcohol as a way to sort of escape that pain and avoid having to do the work on how I can improve my relationship with myself and understanding with certain things. So I think it's awesome that you speak openly about it, because once again, you inspire so many people, and myself included, and to hear you just continue to be so honest and authentic, I fucking love it.
Thanks, man. I'm learning to love it. It's complicated. It's a very complicated process, because again, whether you call it trauma or you call it, just early development, childhood development, adolescence and adulthood and whatnot. I remember moving to Calgary and starting to tell bits of my story, and it was so big and so far-fetched for people that some people called me a liar, and they're like, "Oh, this never happened." And I remember that really shut me down. And so I think that it's been a process. For me, my story is really big. It's really heavy. There's
It's
books written about my dad.
insane.
Yeah, and I know this. And so when I talk about things, like I've always been mindful, and I've always given like the soundbite version because it's a lot and I need to figure out and gauge if someone can understand it. And it's the other part of what I'm saying is for me it's all relative. Like if you stubbed your toe and I've been shot, well then they're the same thing. It's just, if that's the worst you felt and it's the worst I felt, then I get it. But it's not always as easy for other people to see that. So again, I think it's been a process over years to try and get to this place, because sometimes you pick the wrong people to tell these things to, and they give you terrible advice or none at all, or they're not good sounding boards or good ears, and you haven't figured out how to develop the questions to get to the point of asking if someone is in a place where they can accept you and your thoughts and your feelings. Because like most people are civilian and they're not equipped with the psychological tools to handle heaviness.
Yep.
And so again, like picking those people and learning how to express things, and it's been a very long process. But then I think back and, when full circle to like, I'm grateful that I can start mentioning parts of where I came from and why they hurt, because a few years ago I wasn't able to do that. I could share a lot of things. I could be very open, but they were, I don't know if surface things is the right word, because I think that diminishes the depth and gravity of what I was expressing, which they were still very deep things. But I don't know if I allowed people into the vault of me. Like I don't know if I allowed myself to be as vulnerable to the point where my core could be rocked. Because someone could say, "Oh, you were a gangster when you were young, or you were around bad people," and I'll be like, "Yeah," and I don't care. Someone could be, "Oh, you were kind of like a shitty dude at one point." I'd be like, "Okay, I don't care." Like, but if I were to be like, the reason why I hate my name is because I was sold and then adopted by a mobster and then conditioned and abused and manipulated into learning how to seek male validation from a parent, and what I was willing to do and how I was willing to hurt myself and my life to gain that. Like, to say all that was like impossible, man. I couldn't, instead of what I would do is I would just shy away or delete a comment or something like that. Like even talking about makeshift, I've wanted to so desperately close the door on that for so long, because I didn't want to confront what I felt in that experience. I didn't want to have to say, I loved this band, but I didn't love the people I was around, and I wanted to kill myself because of it, and got so close to that. And so rather than face that and say all that, it's like, no, I was suicidal, but I don't want to say that it was because of the thing I loved so much. It was like an abusive relationship for me, so I think that's the biggest thing of my growth spurt this year is like, who am I? Why is that important? And what do I want to say about it?
It's pretty, what you just touched on then, I don't think you've ever said to me before, is the thing that you love so much with makeshift is one of the reasons why you wanted to kill yourself. And, you look at, or Twitch, the guy who took his life recently, but then you look at Robin Williams, and we see all these people who are just seem like the happiest people going, and they're incredible at what they do. And once again, from the outside, you're going, this guy, he has no reason to take his life. And he just mentioned that the thing that you were loving or loved so much was one of the reasons why you wanted to take your life.
Yeah, I mean, that's among many things. Yeah, it was like, it's a really hard thing to confront.
It's huge to confront.
Even that Twitch thing, like, to be honest, like I've kind of kept to myself with the thoughts, but I'm livid. I'm really pissed off. Like I hate that every time someone kills themselves and they have any bit of notoriety, everyone starts this bullshit and banter of like, just if you don't feel good, just call somebody. And it's like, no, like People who are going to kill themselves aren't going to call you.
Yeah.
Like people who aren't going to kill themselves, call your friends. You know, like if you're in an okay place and you have the capacity, which is a big thing. I believe in boundaries on both ends.
Yes.
But like if you have the room and the capacity, like call your friends because they matter. And it comes back full circle to, you know, what I'm saying. Like you assume that people are in this place and so they don't need you and they're busy and but I think at the end of the day, unless you have narcissistic tendencies or maybe sociopathic tendencies or something like that, and none of which I'm you know shitting on. Like I think there's room for everything that people face, but I guess what I'm getting at is, most people crave or desire connection. I mean, if you look at stats on death and dying younger and the correlation between community, it's a staggering number. Like the leading cause of death and elderly people tends to be a lack of connection. You lose a sense of purpose of living, you know, like, and so I think these things matter. People matter. So anyway, I'm running on a bit of a tangent, but I'm pretty frustrated because every time a celebrity kills themselves, that's the shit people say, and I'm like, all right. And then what they do is they make their stupid post on Instagram and then they don't give a shit and they don't call anybody and there's nothing. It's like, just stop making it a trend. Stop trying to pretend that you give a shit because you don't. I get that, like inherently, maybe you don't want to see anyone get hurt, but like, you know, like what are you doing? Like if you're the spokesperson, you know, blasting away online saying all this stuff, then like do something about it. You know?
And I feel the exact same way, and I get frustrated. Just, you know, we didn't not sponsor, but donate time to this charity thing recently, and the person organizing it had a go at me. And I was like, well, this year we've raised X amount of funds. We've run multiple events where we bring people together. We provide people with tools and connection and things that are going to improve their quality of life. But to your point as well, like things like Are You Okay Day, checking in on your mate once a day. So many people want to be the voice for everyone, right? And it's like, if someone tells me to do something, I'm not going to fucking listen, especially if I don't know you. It's going back to our local community, right? Rather than trying to influence the whole world, influence who you're around, which means develop the relationship, have a sense of belonging. And part of creating a sense of belonging is allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I don't just go, hey, you're okay, and never give back, because a relationship is reciprocal, right? You and I have such a great relationship because some days I'm venting to you, or sometimes I'm having a meltdown or whatnot, and other times you never have a meltdown, but you talk to me. Like we have these great conversations, but we know that that's there for us if we want to have those kinds of conversations. However, if it was just me constantly leaning on you and you were like a brick and just never gave me anything, like our relationship probably wouldn't be as good as it is. And that's what I think a lot of people are, you know, I think if we were ever in a tough time, which we've both been in tough times, you'd be one of the people that I call. And I have probably 3 other people I would call who I know I can have the conversations I want to have with. But other people who just go, are you okay there, whatnot, or post their fucking thing, I'm not going to reach out to them. No chance.
Yeah, I mean, getting to a place where you want to reach out is a complicated thing. And then I think there's also, you know, like Brene Brown has been speaking about it recently. I've noticed videos pop up and stuff like this. And it's funny because I've had these conversations with my fiance where I'm like, you know, I'm in such admiration of women and a lot of like feminine relationships. It's not always necessarily women, but I think there's a femininity across some people that allows them to connect in different ways. But I think women typically have this, where they have like a couple close friends and they're in close contact with those friends pretty regularly. And they're texting or calling and sharing. And with men, like, we don't really do that. And like I actually don't do that. And it's not for a lack of desire. Like, it's just, I don't know why. Like, because I desire that. Like, I wish I had a bro who would be like, "Yo, bro, what's up, bro, and you
Bro.
down."
Yeah.
But it's like men are really good at being like, something is busted up, I can be there and I can be present
Yeah.
for you however you need. But when I don't see the waves, I'm not there to kind of help, you know? And so it's just a very interesting thing. But to the point of Brene Brown, she was talking about, I think, vulnerability, and this family walked up to her at a book signing thing and was talking to them, and the wife and the child move over, and the man goes and starts talking to her, and he's like, have you ever thought of like interviewing men? Because I was surrounding the conversation as shame.
Yep.
And she's like, no, like I research women. He goes, well, maybe you should think about researching men. And she goes, why? And he goes, well, you see that woman and that child over there? And he's like, if I show them breaking off of my like high horse, like they will not know what to do with that. Like it's not a place for men to review shame, because people don't respect when a man breaks. They all say that we can break, but they don't respect it. And that's a big problem. And and when I heard that, like part of me like quivered in my brain, because it was like, whoa, that is very true. It's like, I don't feel like it's a safe place to feel the shame outwardly. I don't feel like it's a safe place to feel that vulnerable. I feel like I always have to have my shit together. And if I break down a little bit, then it's abandonment central right there, man.
Oh, bro, I'm so glad you brought that up. Firstly, you speak about how women in particular seem to have these conversations with their friends all the time. I was speaking to Amy about this maybe 3 weeks ago with Emma, obviously Emma, my sister-in-law. I'm like, I really admire the fact with how incredible she is at keeping in contact with her friends and myself and getting everyone together. She's like the fucking community queen is what I'll call her on the podcast. Like amazing at it. And I admire that, because if I didn't have her in my life doing that, like I wouldn't be as social as I am with our group. And I think it's such an important thing. And I just say to Amy all the time, I'm like, I wish like my mates, we did that, because literally I only talk to them if stuff's going on, but it's like throughout the day, I'm like, I would love to just like send some stuff. And once again, I don't think about it, but I want to think about it. And I watch Emma and I'm like, how is she so thoughtful with that? It's quite inspiring. The second thing to your point is, I actually had a client yesterday. We went for a coffee and he was saying the same thing. He's like, just in the dating scene, he's like, we always hear that, for him, he's trying to find a partner, and he's like, girls always say they want these connected, emotionally intelligent men. He's like, I am emotionally intelligent and I am, open to being vulnerable. But as soon as I do that or let the guard down, they freak out and they don't know how to handle that. And I put up a post, and you may not have seen it, maybe a month ago, going, I'm going to start having women on the podcast, and not just experts in their field, but women to share their experiences dating and stuff like that. Because one of the biggest reasons why men take their life by their own hands in Australia is relationship breakdown. So we need to understand what women think about that, so we can actually start having that dialogue. So when you started talking about Brene Brown, I was like, oh, that's epic, because that's a lot of the conversations we've been having over here.
Well, I mean, the vulnerability end is really important. I'm a very vulnerable man, like to a degree, but even me, like there are boundaries, and like learning how to break through those ceilings, because I think it makes you a better man. Of course, I think when you can be a lot more malleable and less rigid, and that's a process in itself, like learning how to be calmer, learning how to not be so domineering, and learning to be less of a man in a lot of ways, but without feeling like you're losing who you are, or a sense of self. Like you can still be stable peace, you can still be all the things that you believe a man can be, but in the healthiest respect. And I think you can also cultivate a relationship, and that does the same. And I think, like, Tuli and I spend a lot of time talking. There isn't anything we don't talk about, and it's, to me, this is the best relationship I've ever been in. Like, I feel like I'm in the best relationship shape I've ever been in. And
bro, you guys are legitimately made for each other. Amy and I, when I was telling her we were having a yarn, she's like, these guys are legit, like, picture perfect for each other. And I was like, I fucking know. Like, you guys are just like a perfect match. You complement each other so well.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think And it's not that any past relationship wasn't complimentary. I think that there is an innate desire from both ends to see each other equally. Like I see her so fully, and through her I see myself fully, that's a very different thing. Like, not only is she an incredible partner, but she serves as the most visible mirror to myself. I have to put myself in check a lot and go, hey, like, because sometimes you can get into a disagreement of sorts, and like you can have an opinion about something. And I'm very opinionated. So like for me, when I speak, I'm very matter of fact, very bold about my statements, very opinionated. She's a lot less like that. She has very bold opinions and she is very opinionated, but the way she addresses the world and the way she puts those out is very different than I. So the way we approach each other is really different. And one of the things that I feel has been such a strong or a strength or a strong point in us has been the ability to be malleable and almost like playing catch, like having a little bit of like give to catch someone else's experience, someone else's opinion. And an example is like if I'm using playing catch or something, I throw the ball quite hard. And so she needs a lot of leeway to catch that ball. She doesn't throw the ball so hard. And what I need to do is I need to chase the ball a little bit more. She needs to back up to catch it, to create space so it's not hitting so hard. And I need to get closer to learn how to catch it because she's not going to throw it as far. And that's a really, really special part of our experience together. And I definitely give a lot of credit up to, so I when I was going through a terrible time and a breakup and, life was tough. And I was in Australia at one point, and I tell people in all my songwriting sessions, I'm like, I had the most beautiful landscape to the worst heartbreak I've ever experienced. And so Australia was that. It was the most beautiful place to watch my heart just be ripped out of its chest. But in that time, I sat with a really great therapist here in Los Angeles in Beverly Hills. And I also hung out with a friend of mine who happens to be one of the biggest media coaches in America. And she's like, if it's anyone from Coldplay to, anybody, she's the one they go to be able to talk and communicate. And so anyway, this person's a really good friend of mine, and the therapist, I'm obviously paying to be a good friend of mine. And both of them are giving me very similar advice. And I was very like, okay, I really want to listen to what they have to say. And so what they recommended to me was they asked me, do you know what your Enneagram is? And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It sounded like a foreign language. They're like, well, it's a number system. And, and I was like, look, man, I'm not into any like hocus pocus stuff. Like, I don't care if you're an Aquarius or a Leo, it doesn't matter. I don't care if Mars is going backwards or forwards or spinning around Saturn. Like, I don't give a crap. None of that resonates with me. But again, I was in this place of growth. And so I was like, I'm going to check out this thing that you're recommending. And I did it, man. And dude, I don't know. I saw myself on paper, and it was the first time I saw myself on paper. And I was like, whoa, that's me to a T. That's scary. And it was beautiful because as I learned about myself, I also started to learn about people around me. And so I'd get my friends to do this thing, and I would be like, what are you? And then they would tell me what their number is, and I'd go and read everything I could to understand them. And I found myself having a completely new language. And so an example of this is I'm what's called an 8, which is a challenger.
An 8.
A big 8. And so my inherent desire is I'm comfortable with all sorts of conflict. Every conflict in me are very well suited for each other. Very decisive. I am fueled by trying to help the underdog, and my intentions are usually rock solid. And that's really me to a T. Like, and it goes, I can go much deeper into it, but that's like a very loose base of like where I'm at. Thule's a 9, and 9s are peacemakers, and they're the exact opposite. They do not deal with conflict well. They do not want to be decisive, and their natural inclination is to run and avoid conflict at all costs. They want to create peace. And so when you put an 8 and a 9 together, that's a recipe for disaster, because unknowingly, let's say I have a problem with the way, I don't know, this is hypothetical, but let's say I have a problem with the way she puts the dishes away. Let's say she wants to stay in the drying rack, and I think it's stupid. You should dry them and put them in the cupboard. It would be easy as an unhealthy, unknowing version of myself to say, hey, those need to go in the cupboard. Like, they shouldn't be sitting out there on the rack like that, just taking up space. Like, they should go, like, that's how my brain works. It's very matter of fact, black and white, do this, do that, do this, do that, and the solution's there. And she might have a very different opinion. She might go, well, I like them being in the dry rack because I like the way they look in the house, and it makes the house feel lived in. And like, and so
point.
All that to say, just as this like really loose, terrible example. But if I come and be very clear and very forward facing and very dominant in my experience, it might shut her down so hard that she could even want to like recede into herself and leave the relationship. It could be that impactful, you know? And so what's a beautiful thing is, or what the beautiful thing is rather, is that knowing this about each other, I can say, hey, hon, I noticed that the dishes have been in the dry rack, and, you know, do you not want to dry them and put them in the cupboard? That's a very different approach that I can take to meet her in a place. Or I can say, you know, would you mind if we do this, and hear her out? I think that, again, I'm doing a very terrible job paraphrasing the depth of what this experience is, but what it is. But the fact is that it's my responsibility in the partnership to invite her, almost like a turtle, out of its shell to a safe place where I say, I'm not here to hurt you or shut you down. I'm here to listen. And that's my opportunity to be a softer, more invested person in a relationship, whereas maybe before in my past, I wouldn't have had that sensitivity to that. And for her, she, with me, can realize that she might have to be a little bit more clearer with me, with her intention. You know, like, again, to use that dish in the dry rack, the truth is, as I'm saying this, I'm like actually thinking about how she would actually respond. And if I said, hey, the dishes need to go in the dry rack, or need to go in the cupboard, she would take them and she would put them in the cupboard, and she might feel defeated because her view is different. And she might not actually say it, because to say it would create conflict. You know what I'm saying?
100%, I get what you're saying.
It's really powerful, man. And again, you have a whole array of numbers. You have 1 through 9, and it's like when you know these things about people, it definitely changes.
Did you just do the test on Google, just Google?
I did one that was, I think, EnneagramInstitute.com.
Yep.
And it cost me like $12 or something like that.
Cool.
I'm sure there's other ones you could do, but I really liked that one, and I've bought it for a ton of my friends because, you know, I've got it. My managers, I've made them do it. You know, like I've gotten any artists that I work with, I get them to do it because I want to communicate effectively.
Bloody hell.
And there's a cultural thing happening in the States right now where even companies are starting to hire based on it, because you can really empower, you know, like, again, as an 8, I really also believe in justice. I like things when things are just and firm. And I'm not very passive that way. I will bully a bully. Like, that's me. Like, I will stand up for what I believe is just and right and firm.
I remember you did that in France when we were at the coffee shop and you heard that person being rude to the waiter, and then you just started speaking French. Do you remember that? Was that in Germany? Do you remember that?
No, what did I do? But that sounds very on brand.
When you were sitting in that, when we were sitting having a meal or some chocolate, you took us to that chocolate place in Strasbourg. Was it Strasbourg?
No, Colmar.
Colmar, yeah. You took us to that place there, and we were sitting down, and then some French guy was just ripping in, and you were like talking to us, and obviously you speak French, and you're like, man, this guy's a prick. And then like, I'm going to say something. And then next minute you've just turned around and here we go.
Yep, I've been like that my whole life.
Yeah, problem solved. I was like, wow, what a guy.
So fun. I did that yesterday. The day before yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah, well, we were sitting down for breakfast, and this guy comes with his two German shepherds, and his German shepherds are smelling all the food, and like they're moving around, and he grabbed the shepherd and shoved its face to the ground, and I was like, "Hey, don't do that." Like, but again, like this is a prime example of like the difference between Tuli and I. She would never say anything.
Mm,
That's not her. Like, I mean, I shouldn't say she would never. Like, something could push her over the edge, but to get her to that point is really intense.
yeah.
Whereas for me, it's like a natural inclination. Like, I'm like, yes, that's a natural instinct. Rather, I'm like, this is exactly how I'm going to react to this, and I don't think about it. So, but anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying that I have found it to be one of the most useful tools to know how to walk through life a little bit differently with a lot more awareness of other people. And it's not always easy to remember it all, but it certainly has helped a lot.
I've got it open here now, so I'll buy one after and do it, and I'll tell you what number I am. I just by looking at it, I saw the numbers there. I feel like I'm going to be a number 3, but like I'm assuming that.
Assuming I had 3 fingers up, bro.
Is that yeah? I was swiping.
I had 3 fingers up. Yeah.
Is that what you reckon?
I think you might be a 3 with a 2 wing. Yeah, an achiever with a goal to help people.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see how that goes. So I'll let you know. Should put some money on it now.
That's so funny. I reckon Amy's a 9.
Oh, mate, 100%.
Super peacemaker, right?
It's
so
funny. Amy had a psychic reading last week or the week before, and she took a photo of me in there and various other people. And they said, oh, the person was like, oh, this person under this photo is like a number 7 in whatever star sign or whatever numbers they use. And I was like, what's the 7? I Googled it, and it was like me to a T. And I was reading it out to the family. Everyone's like, yep, fucking, it's like a know-it-all, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, I feel like I've been trying to not be like that. And everyone's like, no, that's you to a T. And I was like, it literally, I felt like I was reading myself, and I was like, okay, well, I want to get better at this. And I think a lot of what we've spoken about today, Forrest, is the work. People go, what is this work that people talk about? There's a book on it and all this sort of stuff. But it's like, if we look at our life as work, much like we do our career, there's always something that we can be working on to be a better version of ourselves, whether it is, we've spoken about communication, whether it is about addressing things from our past that we may feel trauma around or uncomfortable around. There's always these small little things that we can go and just chip away at, because through doing that work, and I guess for people who are sitting there going, well, why would you bother if my life's good? It's like, well, life always throws new challenges at us, and who we are today isn't going to be the person we need to be to deal with the next challenge. And I always believe prevention is better than cure. So even though right now you may not see why you need to be learning things or challenging yourself, or, I did vocal coaching this year, Forrest. I may be a superstar singer next year. We don't know. Like,
watch out, world.
Yeah, probably not. But I learned so much just through that around why I haven't used my voice just speaking well, from like self-confidence issues to being bullied when I was younger and all this other stuff that I had to deal with. And I was like, this is really uncomfortable. Like, and then we did all these exercises, and I got so much more from that than I was expecting. And a lot of the time, for me, I was just like, oh, what's something that I can learn about that's going to help me? And I was like, podcasting, cool, let's do vocal coaching. And for me, I'm committed to doing these things because I do want to be better. And I've got I'm far from perfect. And sometimes I feel like life's going well, which it is. I'm grateful, but there's always these things that I want to do because I want to be a better role model for the next generation, for my kids eventually, and be the best husband I can be, best friend I can be. And if you aren't growing, you will get complacent. And when you become complacent, sometimes you start going back to old bad habits, just to create a bit of challenge in your life to work through.
I mean, 100%. I think the thing that people often forget is that you are paying into a future version of yourself that is going to show up regardless. And so there is a future version of yourself that is rooting you on like crazy. It's like telling you, get up, go to the gym, or it's telling you, hey, save a couple bucks, or it's telling you, look after your stuff because it's going to matter. It's like, hey, tend to your relationship so that we don't have to be heartbroken 10 years from now. So there is a future version of yourself that you're paying into. And it's important not to get too enamored with that thought because you don't want to not live in the present.
Correct.
But the past is part of your story. It may not be pretty. It may be beautiful, maybe nothing, and that's all okay. Where you are is where you are, and it's the only thing you can really manage. And this has been a very important life lesson for me this year as well. Is like people have memory of who you were at one point. At one point, you were a version of you was the last interaction it had with somebody, and somebody may have a positive experience or a negative one. And if you haven't talked to that person in 10 years, their view of you is who you were 10 years ago.
Not now.
And they might watch you from afar and go, you're a piece of shit, or you're awesome. But not everyone's going to be able to see the growth that you've done and what you've put in, and they haven't seen that work. So that's another interesting thing in itself. But I digress. I think taking today to make small changes or investments into whatever future you want. And so I think it's really important to reverse engineer whatever that future looks like. If you want to have a house in 10 years from now, well, then start saving a couple bucks every month and put it away and learn about where your money can do some work for you so you can grow with interest, and then have your investment work that you can buy a house. If you want to have a house and 2 kids, then you need to think about what that's going to look like. And you can reverse engineer what the job might be, and what to do, and where to do things, and what community you want to be in, and what schools you want to be close to. So I think you don't always consider that in the moment. It's a lot easier today to go, I can spend $1,000 and buy this one thing I need, and without having much consideration for what that would mean for me 10 years from now and what I could do with that. So it's a very, very sensitive balancing act of not getting too far ahead of yourself and not going too far behind yourself, and not only focusing on the present. I think it almost comes back to that theory of thirds. It's another three piece, which is like, spend a bit of time with who you were to know where you are. Spend a bit of time with who you are now to understand where you were, and spend a bit of time in the future you to understand what you need to do today with what you did in the past to get you where you want to be tomorrow.
You are going to be one of the great philosophers of our next generation. It's happening. I want to ask you one last question. What are you most excited about for the upcoming year? Speaking on where you want to go.
On the upcoming year, I think the thing that I'm most excited for is to continue this thought process in which I'm in right now. I'm very excited about being more and more comfortable in my body and in my heart and in my soul. I'm very excited about learning how to articulate what I feel and going into the depth of it. I'm really excited to see if I can somehow find a way to let that child inside of me out in a safe way and watch him grow. I really want to pay into that. And I think that I'm finally in a place to start doing that. And so I'm excited to see how that benefits me in my present. And again, I'm excited to see what type of future I build with that. I think that that's the biggest thing. I'm just excited to have like a bit of a shift in my reality so that all the things that we've spoken about today come even more so into fruition. So it's really the year of practicing what I preach, for me, because I really want to be in a place where I can grow. I feel like, if I'm using that analogy of the seed being under the ground, I feel like I can feel the light now. I feel like I've spent the last while really putting roots in the ground and building a firm foundation of who I am and having an acute awareness of what I'm really trying to do. And I've definitely been growing. I feel like I've broken through the seed and I'm sprouting, but I'm right on the cusp of breaking through the ground, where I start to really see what my world looks like in 3 dimensions now, as the earth, myself, and the sun, so to speak. I'm really excited to start growing into that, and that to me is, I think, the next chapter of my life is really that. Because eventually all these experiences, all the negative, the positive, the amazing, the hurt, that's going to bear fruit of some sort. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but it's starting. And so I'm very thrilled about the prospect of that in the world.
And one other thing I've really loved about this chat is huge as your year has been for your career. We've hardly spoken about that. We've spoken about like, and it's cool because I think quite often we can focus on all these things that you're achieving, but what I've taken away from this is how important it is to work on who you are as an individual, because that's the biggest part of you achieving what you want in your relationship and in your career. Like,
These are the achievements.
yeah.
There's no, you don't get a plaque. You don't get a platinum plaque for, digging into yourself. Like no one cares enough to send you anything. There's no like, there's no YouTube button for being like, wow, you really got through your depression this year. Like nobody,
Nothing. Zip, diddly
No,
squat.
it's so like, yeah, the accolades have been great. But again, I think maybe the reason why we're talking like this today is because I didn't find a sense of understanding or closure or any long-term happiness in any of those successes. They just became new metrics in which I judged my career from. It's like it was like getting a raise at work and that wears off after the second paycheck. It's like, oh, now that's my new threshold. So that's what it's really felt like for me for this past year. I'm really focused on what it's like I have to live in this flesh suit for my whole life, and I want to be comfortable in it in some regard. My heart's happy. Music for me is a reflection of all these things. I write very honest music to me and what I'm feeling, and I write a lot of love songs when I feel in love. I write a lot of sad songs when I feel sad. I write a lot of spoken words about things that I feel very deeply and passionately about while I'm feeling them. So I feel like all the accolades are just like, I mean, maybe as I'm saying this, maybe the platinum plaque is like hey, good job. You were sad enough to write something that other people thought was sad enough. So
to relate to.
Yeah, and they relate to it. I've been calling that, I think we spoke about this last year, but that echo has been incredible. So yeah, I mean, again, all the achievements are incredible. They're great. I'm super fortunate and I'm very grateful that people want to listen to me and they want to tune in. And I'm just here continuing to deep dive into who the hell I am, because that to me is my lifelong big achievement or my big goal. That's the Everest, I need to know who I am first and foremost. And lastly, so that's my life journey, is climbing the mountain that is me and trying to find that moment in my life where I see the view of myself and I go, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Mate, it's been awesome, especially since we've known each other, like watching our paths grow and continue to navigate life and try and look at the lookouts along the way while we're climbing Everest. It's, as I mentioned, been very insightful for me today. Like I'm going to be thinking, I've got to drive in a moment to Toowoomba to see my family, and I'm going to be thinking the whole time about things that you've shared and where it fits into my life. And that's one of the beautiful things. And I do look forward to talking to you all the time, because I know every time we do chat, it's a phenomenal conversation, and I take a lot away from how you articulate things. You're someone that I admire in the way that you use words. And I've said this since 2017 or 16 when we first connected. Like, one thing at the beginning, I was fucking envious. I was like, this dude and his words, and I couldn't use this structure a sentence to save myself. And now it's like, okay, every year I feel like I jump on here and I'm like, I'm excited to see how Forrest thinks I'm speaking. Have I improved? And it doesn't matter. But for me, I'm like, I feel like I held the conversation a little bit better. And mate,
Yeah,
I'm grateful.
I grew up learning how to figure out how to articulate feelings. You grew up learning how to bulldoze through people. So I'll tell you what, man, if you put me on a footy field, I'm sure I probably wouldn't do so well. Even with all the years off, I'm sure you'd knock me to my ass pretty hard. No. I probably would find myself out of breath real quick. And so I think that's a wonderful part about having different people in your life, that where there is a branch, so to speak, that you're trying to grow into. You don't want to be me, and I don't want to be you. I think that the beauty is well, the beauty in it is that, you see something in me that you admire and you want to attain a certain level of that skill set. And likewise, man, I'm enamored by the fact that you can outrow other people and help add to charity, or you'll get people together and teach them skill sets to help them be better versions of themselves, and to help them be better men for the world, and women alike. And I think your curiosity is very special. I think that today's conversation might actually not be so helpful or fruitful if you did speak like me. Be two idiots with a paintbrush trying to paint on the same canvas, and it will, So there's a book I read called Outliers, which I thought was really interesting and really
Malcolm
cool.
Gladwell.
Yeah, like your strength is in the place where there's almost a void, almost like you're seeking. I seek people who can ask great questions because my mind wants to talk, and you seek great questions because you want to learn how other people have to answer them. I think that's like, I'm grateful for.
Did we just start a podcast together?
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Mate, I appreciate your time once again. And for everyone who's listening, all the links for Forest's music and socials will be in the bio wherever you're listening to this on. And once again, truly appreciate the support. If you got value from this, hit the follow, like, subscribe, all that sort of jazz. Leave a review, and we'll be coming at you with some more episodes to sign off. Do something today to be better for tomorrow.
We'll see you in a year.
Yeah. Same time, same place, 2023. Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time. Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.